Another day, another story. Geologists are investigating whether tainted drinking water killed most of Jamestown's colonists during the starving time of 1609-1610. Life was no picnic for the Jamestown colony's earliest founders, but at least they had enough to eat. Welcome to Taboo Eminent Channel. Evidence from waste pits suggests that the settlers, who first arrived on the island in May 1607, feasted on deer, turtles and sturgeon during their first year in the New World, said historian James Wittenberg, the director for instruction at the National Institute of American History and Democracy. The sturgeon in the James River were so large that colonists would wade out and harvest them with an axe, he added. Thanks to an uneasy truce brokered by their leader, Captain James Smith, they supplemented this high-protein diet with corn received from local Powhatans in exchange for goods. But in the fall of 1609, shortly after the arrival of new ships packed with more mouths to feed, a disastrous sequence of events plunged Jamestown into famine, said Wittenberg. Faced with their own shortages because of a prolonged drought, the Powhatans cut off trade with their neighbors after Smith returned to England for medical treatment in October. The settlers began taking food by force, and the Powhatans retaliated by laying siege to Jamestown. Confined to their fort, the colonists could no longer hunt, fish or seek fresh water. We do see in the trash bins from the starving time that they're eating really small animals, said Wittenberg. They eat up all of the domestic stock, the dogs and the horses. They get down to eating rats and even poisonous snakes. The settlers of Jamestown, the first permanent English colony in North America, faced numerous challenges, including harsh living conditions, food shortages, disease, and conflicts with Native Americans. While alcohol consumption was common among the settlers, it is not accurate to say that they drank themselves to death as a primary cause. However, alcohol did play a role in the lives of the Jamestown settlers. They brewed beer because it was safer to drink than the contaminated water in the area. Alcohol consumption was also a part of social and religious customs in the 17th century. Excessive drinking could have contributed to health problems and exacerbated existing issues, but it was not the sole cause of death for the majority of the settlers. The settlers faced a multitude of challenges, and their struggles with disease, malnutrition, and conflicts with Native Americans were more significant factors in the high mortality rate in the early years of Jamestown. Over time, the colony stabilized, and its economy became more diversified, leading to its eventual growth and survival. As the winter wore on, scores of Jamestown's inhabitants suffered from diseases associated with malnutrition and contamination, including dysentery, typhoid and scurvy. By the time Lord de la Warr showed up with supplies in June 1610, the settlers, reduced in number from several hundred to 60, were trying to flee. The starving time's staggering toll has led some historians to posit that various other factors decimated Jamestown's population, either along with or instead of famine, Wittenberg said. According to one theory, agents working for the Spanish government spiked Jamestown's wells with arsenic in a bid for colonial dominance. While most scholars dismiss this notion, some have suggested that the wells were indeed to blame, albeit but for different reasons, Wittenberg said. The historical geographer Carville Earle, among others, believed that dirty water with a dangerously high amount of salt, a result of Jamestown's proximity to brackish sources, sickened the colonists. Jamestown Island is in a zone of the river that during certain times of the year is surrounded by saltwater, Wittenberg explained. It's like a sewer that never gets flushed. The colonists are drawing water out of the same place where human and animal waste are being deposited. For the first time, researchers are approaching this hypothesis from a scientific angle, collecting and analyzing groundwater and sediment from the former site of Jamestown's shallow wells. Plenty of people had suggested there might be an issue with the water they were drinking, but nobody had done a study to investigate what the water quality was and where the contaminants were coming from, said Gregory Hancock, an associate professor of geology at William and Mary, who helped start the project in 2007. He and a colleague, Jim Costi, have been monitoring variations caused by precipitation, tidal flow and seasonality. This data can then be used to reconstruct water quality during colonial times when a severe drought affected the region. Hancock, Costi and an undergraduate geology student, Doug Rowland, are finding that Jamestown's drinking water was abysmal, and not just by today's standards. Indeed, it might have significantly contributed to the Starving Times devastation. Lending support to Earle's conjecture, the team determined that salt water from the James River and a nearby swamp seeps into Jamestown's aquifer, pushing salinity levels past the safety zone for human consumption. This problem would have been even more pronounced during the 17th century because of low rainfalls, said Costi. Colonial accounts of life at Jamestown mention symptoms consistent with salt toxicity, such as lethargy and irritability. But salt poisoning was only one price Jamestown settlers likely paid for hydration, according to the researchers. Human waste from the colonists' outhouses probably percolated down into their water supply, Costi said. Any organic matter they deposited hundreds of years ago is gone, he explained. So we are analyzing the waters for fecal coliform and looking for goose droppings as a proxy. This type of contamination allowed diseases like dysentery and typhoid to spread quickly through the colony and continue circulating, Hancock said. Finally, the scientists detected arsenic at high but varying levels in groundwater near the fort. Does this mean the Spanish were poisoning the wells after all? We aren't in a position of disproving anything yet, Costi said. However, the arsenic concentrations and the seasonal cycling of iron and arsenic that we have measured so far are very consistent with what we would expect from natural processes which have been described by others studying similar environments. Compared to everything else the Jamestown settlers imbibed, then, a dash of naturally occurring arsenic may have been the lesser evil. Surviving Jamestown, a tale of perseverance and resilience. In the early 17th century, a group of brave English settlers embarked on a perilous journey across the Atlantic Ocean to establish the first permanent English colony in North America, Jamestown. Little did they know that their dreams of a prosperous new world would be shattered by a series of daunting challenges that tested their mettle and determination. Upon their arrival in 1607, the settlers faced the harsh reality of their new home. Disease, particularly malaria and dysentery, swept through the colony, claiming the lives of many. Weak and malnourished, the settlers struggled to find adequate food in the unfamiliar environment. The harsh winters and poor agricultural practices led to severe food shortages, causing further suffering among the colonists. Amidst these adversities, the settlers encountered Native American tribes, including the Powhatan Confederacy. Initially, interactions were tense as both groups navigated cultural differences and misunderstandings. The settlers, desperate for food and resources, attempted to trade with the Powhatan people, but these encounters were often marked by suspicion and mistrust. Over time, however, some brave individuals from both communities bridged the gap, facilitating communication and cooperation. The Powhatan people taught the settlers essential survival skills, such as farming techniques suited for the local soil and climate. In return, the settlers introduced the Native Americans to European tools and goods, forging a tentative alliance. Despite these efforts, challenges persisted. Conflicts with the Powhatan tribes escalated, leading to a period of violence known as the First Anglo-Powhatan War. During this time, the settlers had to defend their colony while striving for peaceful coexistence with the native inhabitants. As years passed, the settlers' resilience began to pay off. Improved farming practices led to better harvests, alleviating the food shortages that had plagued the colony. Medical knowledge also advanced, reducing the impact of diseases. The settlers' relationship with the Powhatan people became more stable, paving the way for mutual understanding and trade. Through sheer perseverance and the willingness to adapt, the settlers of Jamestown managed to overcome the odds. Their story became one of survival, cooperation, and the human spirit's ability to endure, even in the face of overwhelming challenges. Jamestown, once a struggling outpost on the edge of an unknown land, slowly transformed into a thriving community, setting the stage for the future growth and development of the American colonies. Voices of Jamestown, a settler's journey. In the early days of Jamestown, amidst the dense Virginia wilderness, lived Eleanor, a young and resilient woman who had embarked on the arduous journey from England in search of a new life. Arriving at the settlement with hope in her heart and dreams of a prosperous future, Eleanor quickly found herself confronted by the harsh realities of the New World. Eleanor, like many others, faced the constant threat of disease that claimed the lives of her fellow settlers. She witnessed the toll it took on families and friends, the sorrow etched on their faces as they mourned their loved ones lost to illness. Despite the pervasive fear, Eleanor became a caretaker, tending to the sick and offering comfort to those in despair. The scarcity of food was a relentless adversary. Eleanor, determined and resourceful, took it upon herself to learn from the local Native American tribes. With guidance from a Powhatan elder named Matawaka, she discovered the secrets of cultivating crops suited to the Virginian soil. Through patience and perseverance, she managed to harvest enough food to sustain her community, becoming a beacon of hope for her fellow settlers. Amidst the struggles, Eleanor forged unlikely friendships with members of the Powhatan tribe, transcending language barriers through gestures of goodwill. She exchanged knowledge about European farming techniques for the wisdom of the land shared by her Powhatan friends. In the process, she became a bridge between two worlds, fostering understanding and cooperation. Eleanor's tale was one of resilience and adaptation. She experienced the sorrow of loss and the joy of triumph, witnessing the settlement transform from a struggling outpost into a resilient community. Her journey mirrored the collective spirit of the settlers, who, against all odds, built a foundation for the future generations to thrive upon. As years passed, Eleanor's efforts and the perseverance of her fellow settlers laid the groundwork for a burgeoning colony. Their stories of endurance and collaboration became the foundation upon which the United States would eventually stand, a testament to the unwavering human spirit that defined the early days of Jamestown. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.